Mina's fingers danced across the dusty control panel, her eyes scanning the lines of scrolling data. The air in the Goimgang colony's monitoring station was recycled and stale, smelling faintly of machine oil and old coffee. On her screen, the asteroid belt, known as the Rust Shoals, spun in a lazy, pixelated dance. It was her job to watch it, to note any shifts in composition or trajectory that might be worth a mining team's time. It was a job everyone considered deeply, profoundly boring. Until today. A tiny fluctuation in the gravitational sensors caught her eye. It was a whisper, a hiccup in the steady pull of the rocks. Probably nothing. A passing micrometeorite swarm, or a magnetic pulse from the planet's turbulent core. Standard procedure said to log it and move on. But Mina was bored, and something about the signature's clean, unnatural frequency pinged in her brain. She isolated the data stream, running a secondary filter. The fluctuation remained. It wasn't random. It was a perfect, steady distortion, holding position behind the largest nickel-iron asteroid in the belt. A ship's cloaking field, maybe, but no Imperial ship, from a sleek corvette to a hulking ore hauler, had a gravitational profile like that. Their drives made noise, a specific kind of space-time rumble. This was silent. This was still. This was cold. She leaned forward, her breath fogging the screen for a second. "Jun, you should see this." At the back of the small room, Jun looked up from his report tablet. His face was lined with the tired patience of a man who had spent 20 years filing reports for an empire that barely remembered his colony existed. "See what, Mina? Another phantom rock that looks like it might have a hint of vanadium?" "Not a rock," she said, her voice low. "A shadow. Look at the gravimetric readout for Sector 7 Gamma." With a sigh, Jun pushed himself out of his chair and ambled over. He squinted at the graph she pointed to. He saw the anomaly. His first reaction was a frown of professional annoyance. Sensor ghost. The ore in that sector is laced with ferrocite. It plays hell with the long-range scanners. Remember last cycle? We had a warship that turned out to be a particularly dense lump of iron. This isn't a ghost, Jun. The ferrocite interference has a chaotic pattern. This is ordered. It's holding a shape. Mina's fingers flew, pulling up another overlay of passive thermal scan. The asteroid was a faint red blob. The space around it was the deep blue of the cosmic background. But right beside it, nestled in its gravitational shadow, was a patch of absolute black. Not the blue of cold space, but a pure, light, and heat-swallowing blackness. Jun's practiced dismissal wavered. He leaned closer, his nose almost touching the screen. That's a sensor error. A dead pixel cluster. On 3 different imaging systems? Mina switched the display again, this time to a mass distribution map. The asteroid was a defined lump. And there, attached to it like a silent remora, was another, smaller mass. A mass with a density and configuration that made no sense. It was too compact, too perfectly geometric to be natural. A long silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the computers. Jun finally straightened up, rubbing his eyes. All right. It's something. An unregistered salvage operator, maybe. Some rich core worlder's experimental yacht that got lost. They're probably just hiding, fixing a drive. They've been there for 6 days, Jun. Static. No drive flare, no comms ping, no life support emission spike. Nothing. Mina pulled up the log history. The anomaly had appeared a week ago and hadn't moved a centimeter relative to the asteroid since. 6 days? Now Jun looked concerned. A ship in trouble would have called for help. A ship hiding would have moved. A ship doing scientific study would be scanning. This ship just was. Run a silhouette extrapolation. Use the gravitational lensing and the thermal void. Let's see what we're looking at. It took the colony's modest computer several minutes to render the image. When it finished, both of them stared. On the screen was a sleek, angular shape. It had no visible running lights, no sensor arrays, no obvious engine nacelles. It looked less like a constructed vessel and more like a shard of black glass that had been chipped off the edge of reality itself. It was unlike any design in the Imperial archives, which Mina had already quietly checked. "That's not one of ours," June stated the obvious, his voice hushed. "Not Empire, not any of the frontier consortiums. That's alien." The word hung in the air. First Contact was the stuff of old stories and Imperial propaganda, where humanity always triumphed. But this didn't feel like a story. It felt like finding a predator asleep on your doorstep. "We have to report it," Mina said. "To who? Sector Command?" Jun snorted. "They'll laugh. They'll say we've been breathing too much recycled air and seeing things. They get 100 alien contact reports a year from backwater posts, and they're all space junk or sensor malfunctions. We have the data. The silhouette. This is real." Jun looked from the chilling image back to Mina's determined face. He knew she was right. Protocol was protocol. He also knew what happened to low-level colonial technicians who cried wolf. Their funding could get cut. Their equipment could be reassessed. But the sight of that dark, silent shape left a cold knot in his stomach. "Fine," he grumbled. "We'll file it. But we're using the low-priority, unidentified navigational hazard form, not the potential extraterrestrial contact form. I don't want a psych evaluation added to my file." Together, they compiled the data. They attached the graphs, the thermal images, the rendered silhouette. Mina wrote a concise, dry description, sticking strictly to observable facts. Jun added his supervisor code, a string of numbers that meant verified by post-lead. Low confidence. He hesitated over the final transmit key. "You know what happens if they actually take this seriously, right?" he said, not looking at her. "They don't send scientists. They send the fleet. They send a destroyer to investigate. And if that thing out there doesn't like being hailed by a destroyer..." Mina met his gaze. "If it's peaceful, it has nothing to fear. If it's not, shouldn't the Empire know?" Jun had no answer for that. He pressed the key. The report vanished into the Empire's vast bureaucratic network, one drop in an ocean of data. An automated reply flickered on the screen. "Report received. Priority. Tier 5. Reference code GGM774 Alpha." And out in the rust shoals, the dark ship continued its silent watch. It did not move. It did not signal. It simply waited, a patient, unknown sentinel, as its existence was quietly logged and buried in the bowels of an arrogant, sprawling empire that was already doomed. On Goingao, Mina stayed late, her eyes fixed on the live feed, watching the patch of nothingness that held a shape. She felt no excitement, no historic thrill, only a deep, quiet dread, like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air goes still and heavy, and you know something is coming that you cannot stop. The report from Goingang Colony, tagged GGM774 Alpha, drifted through the Empire's data streams for 17 standard days. It was processed by automated filters, flagged by a low-level watch algorithm for containing the terms unidentified and static orbital object, and finally deposited in the queue of a junior analyst at Regional Fleet Command. The analyst, a man named Siok, skimmed it. He saw the blurry silhouette, the odd sensor readings. He had seen 100 just like it. 99 were sensor ghosts or civilian ships with faulty transponders. He almost archived it, but a line in the report made him pause. Thermal profile indicates complete null. No emissions consistent with known drive or life support technology. Complete null was rare. It suggested advanced stealth, maybe a rival corporation testing new tech in the fringe. That was a fleet matter. With a sigh, he upgraded the ticket's priority from ignore to review and kicked it to his superior's desk. From there, it began a slow climb upward, finally landing in the tactical feed of the 3rd Sector Fleet. Currently on a show-the-flag patrol under Admiral Tay, on the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Hammer of Unity, Admiral Tay reviewed the data. The bridge was a cathedral of polished metal and glowing screens, humming with quiet power. Tay was a man carved from ambition, his uniform sharp, his eyes missing nothing. He saw not an alien mystery, but an opportunity. His patrol had been uneventful, a waste of a powerful battle group. Here was a tangible, if vague, threat. Investigating it would look proactive on his record. Neutralizing it, if necessary, would look even better. An unregistered vessel, lurking in an Imperial resource zone, Tay mused, his voice cool. Potentially a corporate spy. Possibly pirates testing new cloaking tech. Either way, it is a violation. A show of force is required. He wanted a clean, efficient solution. He would not risk his dreadnought on a curiosity. He detached the Vigilant, a mid-sized cruiser, and 2 Kestrel-class frigates, the Swift and the Dagger. Proceed to Gormgang. Hail the object. If it does not identify itself and depart, you are authorized to encourage its compliance. The small squadron made the jump to the edge of the Gormgang system. Captain Rhee of the Vigilant was a by-the-book officer. He followed his orders to the letter. For 24 hours, his comms officer broadcast the standard Imperial hails on all frequencies. Unidentified vessel in Sector 7 Gamma. This is the Imperial Cruiser Vigilant. You are in a restricted navigation zone. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Power down your drives and prepare for inspection. There was only silence from the rust shoals. On the colony below, Mina and Jun watched the Imperial icons blink on their long-range tracker. The cold knot in Mina's stomach tightened. Jun just looked grim. They're going to poke it, he muttered. Captain Rye received his next order from Admiral Tay, who was watching the live feed from light minutes away. Demonstrate our seriousness. A warning shot across its bow. Let them see our resolve. On the Vigilant, the weapons officer charged a single plasma battery. The targeting system painted the dark, silent ship nestled against the asteroid. The shot was calculated to pass a mere kilometer from the unknown vessel's position, a classic harmless warning. A bright, searing bolt of superheated matter lanced through the dark of the asteroid belt. The instant the plasma bolt crossed the arbitrary 1-kilometer threshold, the dark ship moved. It did not turn. It did not bank. One moment it was static. The next it had shifted laterally, placing itself directly between the asteroid and the path of the plasma bolt. The movement was instantaneous, with no visible engine flare, no inertia. It was as if space itself had rearranged. The plasma bolt struck the ship's black hull. There was no explosion, no shield flare. The bolt simply vanished, absorbed into the darkness without a flash or a sound. For half a second, there was perfect stillness on the bridge of the Vigilant. Captain Rhee opened his mouth to give a new order. Then the dark ship fired back. A beam of pure, white light erupted from its prow. It was not a laser. It was something else, a coherent stream of energy that seemed to warp the space around it as it traveled. It did not strike the Vigilant's powerful layered shields. It ignored them. The beam passed through the energy barriers, as if they were not there, and touched the hull of the cruiser. Where it touched, matter ceased to be matter. The complex alloys of the hull, the circuitry beneath, the crew inside, everything in a perfect cylindrical path from bow to stern was transformed. There was no heat, no explosion. The metal, the plastic, The flesh simply unraveled into a shower of harmless, glowing particles that winked out a moment later. The beam cut for 3 seconds, and when it stopped, the mighty Imperial cruiser was in 2 clean, severed pieces, their edges glowing with a faint, eerie light. Internal atmosphere vented in a silent, tragic puff. No escape pods launched. There had been no time. On the bridges of the frigates Swift and Dagger, panic erupted. Evasive. Full retreat. Jump now. Their captain screamed. The Dagger turned to flee, its engines flaring. The dark ship pivoted, a motion so smooth it was unnatural, and fired a second, shorter beam. The Dagger's engine compartment and jump drive vanished, leaving the rest of the ship a dead, spinning hulk. The Swift was luckier, or smarter. Its captain didn't try to turn. He slammed full power to his forward thrusters, using the cruiser's wreckage as cover, and initiated an emergency jump calculation. The dark ship seemed to watch for a moment, as if assessing. It did not fire again. The Swift shuddered as its jump drive activated, ripping a hole in space-time and vanishing. On the Hammer of Unity, Admiral Tay stared at the tactical display. The Vigilance icon had gone from green to black in less than 5 seconds. The Dagger's was grayed out, drifting. The feed from the Vigilant had cut off, mid-screen from Captain Ray. The only data now flooding in was from the Swift's automated systems, transmitting frantic, garbled sensor logs during its jump. The logs showed the impossible movement, the weapon that ignored shields, the total, effortless annihilation. Tay's face was pale, his ambition frozen into pure, cold shock. This was not a pirate. This was not a corporate rival. This was an extinction-level event that had just brushed his fleet aside like dust. His mind, trained for imperial politics and bullying pirates, scrambled. His career was the last thing on his mind now. Survival was first. But a deeper, more terrifying thought followed. If that ship could do this, what was its purpose? And were they next? He cleared his throat, the sound loud in the silent bridge. Recall all patrols. Bring the fleet to battle readiness. Send a priority Omega transmission to Core Command. Use the phrase existential threat confirmed, and get me a secure channel to the analysis division. I want every piece of data from that colony, from the first scan. Now, below, on Goimgyung, Mina watched the Imperial icons on her screen blink out, one by one. The data feed from the local military relay showed the catastrophic energy spike before it died. She looked at Chun. No words were needed. The warning shot had been fired. The silent sentinel had responded. And the Empire, for the first time in living memory, had just been made to bleed. The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. The priority Omega transmission from Admiral Tay tore through the Empire's secure networks like a screen in a quiet room. On the Imperial core world of Shinjuku Prime, in a command center deep within a mountain, the data was processed. The raw sensor logs from the frigate Swift were analyzed, reanalyzed, and then analyzed again. Senior officers and political liaisons watched the playback in stunned silence. They saw their cruiser die without a fight. They saw a weapon that defied every principle of war they knew. A state of emergency was declared, not publicly, but within the highest chambers of power. Panic was a luxury the Empire could not afford to show. Instead, they would show overwhelming force. The dark ship was now designated Entity Zero. The official internal stance was that it was a devastating new weapon deployed by a hidden rival faction, perhaps a splinter group from the outer colonies. The concept of a truly alien intelligence was too large, too frightening to accept. It had to be a human enemy. That they knew how to fight. Admiral Tay, his reputation now tied irrevocably to the crisis, was given a single order: eradicate the threat. He was granted full authority over the nearby Third Fleet, one of the Empire's premier battle groups. It was a force designed to pacify rebellious star systems, a hammer meant to smash entire planetary defenses. Against a single ship, it was overkill of the highest order. That was the point. The Empire would answer uncertainty with absolute, terrifying certainty. Te, aboard the Hammer of Unity, was joined by over 40 capital ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, heavy cruisers. They formed an armada that blotted out the stars as they made the coordinated jump to the Going-Gang system. The plan was simple and brutal, a full encirclement of the asteroid belt. They would saturate the area with jamming, disable the target with focused electromagnetic pulses, and then board it with elite Marine teams. If disabling proved impossible, they would reduce the asteroid and the ship to atomic dust with a synchronized broadside from 200 heavy cannons. There would be no more warning shots in the colony below. The arrival of the fleet was a physical tremor. The sky filled with the menacing shadows of dreadnoughts, their running lights like cold, angry stars. Mina and Jun could only watch, feeling small and helpless. The Empire had come to solve the problem they had discovered, and it felt like watching a giant try to swat a wasp with a sledgehammer. The dark ship, Entity Zero, did not react to the arrival of the fleet. It remained in its position, a silent shard against the gray asteroid. The Imperial Armada completed its encirclement, jamming fields powerful enough to black out a continent slammed into place. Directed EMP bursts, capable of frying every circuit on a planet, focused on the single target. The dark ship was unaffected. It floated silently within the storm of electronic warfare, a stone in a raging river. Admiral Te, his jaw tight, gave the order. Marine assault shuttles, launch. Prepare for voluntary boarding. If doors are not opened, cut them. A swarm of armored shuttles, like metal insects, detached from the carriers and sped towards the asteroid belt. They were halfway there when the dark ship finally moved. It didn't attack the shuttles. Instead, it shot forward, not towards any ship, but towards the empty center of the Imperial formation. Its movement was again instantaneous, a teleportation that physics said was impossible. 1 second it was by the asteroid, the next it was in the middle of the fleet. Panic erupted on the Imperial bridges. Target it. All batteries fire at will. Space lit up with a hellish storm of light. Plasma beams, railgun slugs, and fusion missiles converged on the dark ship. It moved. It didn't so much fly as flicker. It slid between barrages, not dodging them so much as being somewhere else when they arrived. Its own white beams began to flash short, precise pulses. Each pulse found a target. A dreadnought's main reactor would vanish, leaving the rest of the ship dark and dead. A cruiser's bridge tower would simply cease to exist. The weapons did not explode their targets. They deleted sections of them with surgical, terrifying accuracy. On the command deck of the Hammer of Unity, Admiral Te watched his tactical display dissolve into chaos. Ship after ship winked from green to black. Damage reports were nonsensical. Starboard side missing. No explosion, just gone. Jump drive core has vanished. No breach, the chamber is just empty. A young data analyst, June, was frantically running the sensor feeds through a pattern filter. His face was pale. He wasn't a warrior. He was a numbers man. And the numbers were telling a story that made his blood run cold. He pushed his way to Admiral Te's side, his voice trembling but urgent. "Sir, it's not trying to destroy the fleet." Te turned, his eyes wild. "What are you talking about? Look at the screen." "It is, but look how." June pointed to his own tablet, showing a schematic. "It's only hitting primary reactors, drive cores, bridge modules, and heavy weapon mounts. It's ignoring life support, barracks decks, escape pods. It's not killing us. It's disarming us. It's surgically removing our ability to make war. It's performing system-wide disablement. Pest control. Before Tay could process this, a scream came from the tactical officer. Sir, the entity. It's emitting a massive energy pulse. Not a weapon. It's a scan. A deep-level quantum scan of our entire network. On the main viewer, the dark ship glowed for an instant with a complex web of light. It had stopped firing. It had taken the data it wanted from the dying fleet's computers. Then it did the unthinkable. It calculated a jump trajectory, not away, but inward. Using the emergency coordinates every ship was broadcasting for retreat and rescue. It ripped open a jump point and vanished. A deathly quiet fell over the ruined Third Fleet. Half the capital ships were drifting, dead hulks. The others were crippled. The cost was unimaginable. Then, the reports began flooding in from Core Command. The transmission was frantic, broken. Shinjuku Prime orbital defenses. Under attack. It's here. The entity is here. The signal dissolved into static. The dark ship had followed the trail home. It had jumped directly to the Empire's heart. Admiral Tay sank into his command chair, the ambition, the pride, the very soul of the Empire crumbling around him. He had brought the hammer down, and the Wasp had not only avoided it, but flown directly into the giant's eye. June looked at the devastation on the screens, his analyst's mind finally accepting the truth. This was no enemy. This was a judgment. And the sentence was being carried out in real time, light years away, at the very throne of the Empire. They had not contained the threat. They had delivered it to their own doorstep. The news did not come in official bulletins. It came in broken whispers, in garbled data packets from fleeing civilian ships, in the sudden, deafening silence from the core. On Goemgyang, the planetary datanet flickered and died, replaced by a chaotic scramble of panic channel broadcasts. Mina and June, along with the rest of the colony, huddled around jury-rigged receivers, listening to the end of an empire. A freighter captain, his voice cracking with static, described Shinjuku Prime sky. The orbital shipyards. They just came apart. No noise. They unfolded like flowers made of light and then were gone. The defense platforms fired, but the beams. They went straight through the black ship. It didn't even care. Another signal from a medical frigate that had fled the core. It's not attacking cities. It's circling the military anchorages. The fleet command spire on the moon is just a flat plane now, like it was sliced off with a knife. No explosion. No debris. Just gone. The Empire, a vast, intricate machine of control, had its central gears removed. The dark ship was methodical, patient, and utterly relentless. It would appear at a major naval depot, hover for minutes as white beams lanced out, and then vanish. It targeted warp drive manufactories, shield generator plants, heavy weapon foundries, and command and control nexuses. The economic and political heart of the empire, the trading hubs, the agricultural worlds, the luxury stations, was left untouched. It was a surgical strike against the empire's ability to be an empire. On Goemgyang, the first reaction was fear. If the empire could fall, what would happen to them? But as the days passed and no alien invaders descended to enslave them, a strange stillness settled over the colony. The oppressive, ever-present weight of imperial taxes, resource quotas, and draft notices simply vanished. The local officials, who had reported to regional governors, who reported to sector lords, who reported to the core, found they had no one to report to. The chain of command was empty. Chun sought out Mina in the monitoring station. The screen that had once shown the dark ship now showed a chaotic star map with last known reports. We were the first to see it, he said quietly. We filed the report that started all this. It didn't start anything, Mina replied, her eyes tired. It was already here. We just saw it first. The Empire started it when they fired. She pulled up the original sensor logs from the day of the Vigilance destruction. Look, it didn't move until the plasma bolt crossed its threshold. It was just watching, waiting to see what we would do. Jun nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing. It was a reaction, not an initiation. Guardian swatting the hand that tried to strike it. He accessed a still-functioning, low-level Imperial data portal, a back channel used by technicians. He posted a simple query. Is anyone analyzing the entity's target patterns? To his surprise, he got a reply. It was from an analyst tag named June. The message was short and encrypted. Pattern is consistent. It targets capacity for organized violence. Ignores all else. Conclusion. It is a response to aggression. Not a campaign of conquest. Jun and Mina began a slow, cautious dialogue with June, who was now hiding in a derelict section of a surviving orbital station, cut off from the crumbling Imperial network. They shared data, the original peaceful observations from Gongang, the tactical logs from the dead fleet, the reports from the core. The picture became horrifyingly clear. It's an automated system. June transmitted, his text appearing on their screen. A relic or a probe or a boundary marker. We don't know who made it, but its rule is simple. It tolerates life. It does not tolerate large-scale, expansionist militarism. It measured the Empire's aggression, the warning shot, and enacted a pre-programmed response. Total disarmament of the threatening entity. So, it's a weapon? Mina typed, No, June replied. A weapon seeks to destroy an enemy. This seeks to remove a condition. It's a gardener pulling a poisonous weed. The weed just happened to be the biggest political structure in human space. The implications settled over them. The dark ship wasn't evil. It wasn't conquering. It was enforcing a law they never knew existed. A law against becoming too powerful, too aggressive. A law written in the language of absolute force. On Gongang, the colony leader, a practical woman named Hana, called a meeting. With no Imperial authority left, people looked to each other. The galaxy hasn't ended, Hana said to the gathered colonists in the main hangar. The Empire has. Their ships aren't coming to collect our ore. Their tariffs aren't draining our accounts. We have enough food, enough power, enough people to look after each other. The question is, what do we do now? A young pilot named G, who had dreamed of flying Imperial fighters, spoke up. Do we try to fight it? The dark ship? A heavy silence followed. Mina stood. No, she said, and her voice carried. We don't. We learn from it. The Empire shot first. The Empire brought a fleet to smash a question mark. The Empire is gone because it could not imagine anything stronger than itself. We can. Our first job is to survive. Our second job is to remember why the giants fell. Her words spread through the colony. They were not a rallying cry, but a solemn understanding. The fear began to transform, not into courage, but into a careful, humble responsibility. They fixed their own water recyclers without waiting for Imperial engineers. They organized their own patrols, using the colony's few short-range skiffs. They started planting hydroponic gardens in unused storage bays. It was hard, but it was theirs. Across 100 fringe worlds, similar scenes played out. The dark ship had broken the cage. Some planets descended into chaos without the Imperial enforcers. But many, like Gongang, found a strength they had forgotten they had. The galaxy didn't end. It simply became quieter and infinitely more vast. And at the edge of every system's consciousness was the knowledge of the silent arbiter, the dark shard that waited, watching for the next weed to grow too tall, too proud, and too armed. The Empire had been that weed. Now, in its place, a million smaller, more fragile shoots tentatively reached for the sun. The silence was the most profound change. For generations, the static of imperial commerce and military traffic had been a constant background hum in the galaxy. Now that hum was gone. In its place was a deep, star-filled quiet, broken only by the short-range chatter of local systems and the cautious, newfound voices of independent worlds. The dark ship did not vanish. After its systematic dismantling of the Empire's military spine was complete, it returned to the fringes. It did not go back to the Goengang asteroid belt. Instead, it took up a position at the gravitational midpoint between three former Imperial core systems, a silent sentinel in the empty dark. It moved only in small, precise adjustments to maintain its station. It made no transmissions. It responded to no hails. It simply was a permanent fixture in the sky, a monument to a finished judgment. On Goengang, life had reshaped itself. The colony was no longer just a mining outpost. It was becoming a home. The large imperial refining machinery sat silent, but smaller. More efficient workshops built from scavenged parts now processed ore for their own use, for building greenhouses and water purifiers. The fear of the dark ship had not disappeared, but it had settled into something else, a solemn, respectful awareness. Like living in the shadow of a dormant volcano. Mina had been chosen to help run the new planetary observation program. It wasn't about watching for threats from the Empire anymore. It was about watching the sky, learning the new rhythms of a free galaxy, and always monitoring the distant, steady signal of the Sentinel. One evening, as the second moon rose, the colony's new leader, Hana, found Mina at her console. On the screen was the familiar, unblinking data point representing the dark ship. What do we call it? Hana asked softly, leaning against the doorway. In our records. We can't just keep writing Entity Zero or the dark ship. It feels wrong. Mina didn't turn from the screen. She had thought about this often. We don't, she said finally. We give it a designation, like a star. GX Lambda 1, something cold and factual. We don't give it a name. Names are for things we understand, or things we love, or things we fight. This is none of those. If we name it, we might start to think we know it. We don't. We just know what it does. That has to be enough. Hannah nodded, understanding. The silence stretched, comfortable. June is arriving tomorrow, she said, on that little courier ship from the Tycho system. He says he's bringing the last of the Imperial analysis. Wants to see where it all began. The next day, the small dented ship landed on the refurbished landing pad. June stepped out, blinking in the sunlight. He was thinner, older-looking than the data profile Jun and Mina had seen. He carried a simple case. Jun met him, and they shook hands. A greeting between two men who had shared a catastrophe through text on a screen in the monitoring station. Now clean and organized with colony-made equipment, Jun presented his data. It was everything the Empire's best analysts had pieced together before their command structure dissolved. Charts of the ship's energy emissions, impossible fractal patterns that suggested technology built on principles beyond human physics. Maps of its targets, showing with chilling clarity the surgical removal of every major weapon site and fleet base, while hospitals, farms, and schools within the same cities were left untouched. It's a line in the sand, Jun said, his voice flat. A boundary no civilization is allowed to cross. We crossed it. We were pruned back. He looked at Mina. You were right. It was here first. We just finally made enough noise to trigger it. That night, A small group gathered on a rocky bluff outside the colony domes. Mina, June, Hana, and the young pilot. They built a small fire, not for warmth, but for light against the vastness of the night. Above them, the stars were impossibly clear, no longer dimmed by the glow of orbital traffic or imperial mega-structures. G pointed to a steady, non-twinkling point of light high in the sky, not a star, but the reflected sunlight on the dark ship's position. "Do you think it will ever leave?" he asked. "No," June answered, watching the dot. "I think it's permanent. A signpost. A warning to any who come after us. A reminder that the universe has rules, and some rules are enforced." "It's lonely," Nina said, surprising herself. Jun poked the fire with a stick. "It's not lonely. It's just done. Its job is finished. Now it just stands there, so we don't forget the price of the job." Hana looked around the circle, their faces lit by firelight under the infinite stars. "Then we remember. And we build something that doesn't need pruning. Something that doesn't reach for a hammer as its first answer." The years that followed were not easy. There were struggles, disputes between worlds, shortages, and hardships. But no single power rose to fill the Empire's void. The memory of the silent sentinel was too fresh, its lesson etched into the soul of 100 recovering worlds. Conflict was small, local, and solved with words more often than weapons. To build a fleet to centralize that much power was an unthinkable risk. The dark ship had taught them the cost of hubris. Mina, years later, now training a new observer, would still often take the night watch. She would look at the steady pinprick of light in the sky, GX Lambda 1 on her charts. She felt no hatred for it, no love. It was a fact of life, like gravity or the vacuum of space. It was the reason her children could grow up in a colony that was theirs, not the Empire's. It was the reason the sky was quiet. The story of the Empire's fall became a foundation myth for a new, humbler age. It was told to children not as a tragedy, but as a cautionary tale. They were told of giants who thought themselves masters of the universe, and of the quiet, dark ship that reminded them they were not. And in the deep, star-filled silence, the sentinel kept its watch, a forever reminder that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed, and that the universe, in its infinite mystery, has its own ways of keeping the peace.